Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which are free to download and free to use. And they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, a full 3-hour edition of the show. Still not back in studio yet. I am in points between Boise and Albuquerque, but back for a full 3-hour show today. And I would love to interact with you. Got some great text right at the end of yesterday's show. Get to some of those, but seems like you're in the mood to chat, and I would love to chat with you. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Or if you're watching the show on social media, you could drop a comment right there. The wonder of technology. To steal a line from one of the best sports movies of all time, Moneyball. How can you not be romantic about the Olympics? The last 24 hours or so is the reason why every couple of years we watch a bunch of sports that we never watch outside of the Olympics, that we know only minimal information about. We can't speak to some of these sports intelligently, but we all watch and go absolutely berserk when someone who is wearing the red, white, and blue does something amazing. And over the last 24 hours or so, we have seen some amazing performances from American athletes. Yesterday, it was Michaela Schifrin. 8 straight Olympic races without even medaling. Off to a really rough start in Italy. Comes back and doesn't just win gold in the slalom. She dominates with a margin of victory that you could stack up every other event in the history of the Olympics. That event, add up the margin of victory for all of those skiers, and they would basically match what Michaela Schifrin did on her own yesterday. And then today, you get the U.S. women's hockey team that beats Canada in overtime to win a gold medal. Megan Keller with the winner in OT. And that only came after the GOAT of women's hockey, Hillary Knight, scored the game-tying goal with just over 2 minutes left in regulation. After Team USA pulled the goalie. USA was in a desperate situation. That game today was completely different. Other than USA's goalie was fantastic again. But the complexion of that game was completely different. The U.S. blew the doors off of Canada in the round robin play. And I have wondered over the past couple of weeks, yes, they were without their best player, but is she good enough for 5 goals? because they didn't have her and they got crushed. Well, they add her back to the lineup and the stakes get a little bit higher, and Canada doesn't need 5 goals. In the end, they needed 2. But that game was completely different. And Canada had it. The only goal of the game before Hillary Knight scored with 2:04 left in regulation was a shorthanded goal by a player on Team Canada who just so happened, when she was in college, led the nation in shorthanded goals. A more elite pull from a research department I have never found in sports broadcasting history. The fact that they were able to pull up that O'Neill, who scores for Canada, led the nation in shorthanded goals. That is an amazing pull. Bravo to NBC. The one player that has shown a propensity to be able to score shorthanded just so happened to score shorthanded for Canada. And after that, the U.S., I thought, got to their game, but you wondered, was it too late? Canada's goalie was phenomenal. And the seconds were ticking away, and it was still 1-0, still 1-0, still 1-0. And then Hillary Knight, maybe the one player on that team that you can mention, that you can name, caps off maybe her Olympic career, the most decorated Olympic career for a hockey player. And she caps it off by sending that game into overtime. They were showing pictures of her as a young woman standing next to her teammates who were children. In fact, the player that got one of the assists on the goal had the initial shot, Layla Edwards. They showed a picture of the two. Hillary Knight is like 6 inches taller than her. So for Hillary Knight to score that goal is just perfect. And then the U.S. in overtime, we won't mention the format of the overtime because this is a happy place, positive thoughts. The U.S. wins it for their 3rd gold medal. And then to cap it off, in between the two, while you were maybe watching hockey, Amber Glenn, who is based here in Colorado Springs, the figure skater who had a disaster of a short program yesterday, bailed on one of her elements. She was in 13th place. She came back in the free skate today and was nearly flawless. And up until the very last group of skaters today, she was sitting in that seat as the leader. And what she was trying to do today would have been unprecedented. No figure skater who has finished outside the top 10, let alone 13th, has ever come back to win a medal. And Amber Glenn finishes just out off of the podium. I talked yesterday about the resilience and the uncommon mental fortitude that Olympians have, even when you compare them to what we would label as quote unquote normal athletes. You know, the NFL, the NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, college sports. what these Olympians do and what they are asked to do has to put an unbelievable strain on them mentally. And then to have what has happened to Michaela Schifrin in these games, what happened to Amber Glenn just yesterday, just 24 hours ago. Amber Glenn was almost in tears because she thought, along with the rest of the world, mind you, that her chances of a medal were zero. And I suppose in the end, maybe they were. Right? Maybe they were. But she came back the very next day and put up one of today's best performances. She did that. It's just in the aggregate, it wasn't enough. But what she did today, coming back from that, it's amazing. And it will never cease to amaze me what these Olympians are able to do every 4 years. The resiliency of these athletes, specifically these three Americans, it's why we watch the Olympics. It's why we watch a sport that we don't even fully understand. I mean, I can tell if a figure skater falls, that's not good. But I'm watching. As soon as the hockey game was over, I flipped back over to the figure skating. I'm watching these, and they look to me, they're all awesome. Like, I can't discern between any of these skaters. I don't know. Alyssa Liu, by the way, an American, ends up winning gold. You may have seen her. She's got like the striped hair. It's like black and blonde stripes going down it. She ended up winning gold. So I'm not even mentioning the American who won gold. And for that, Alyssa Liu, I apologize, as she's getting ready to step onto the podium right now. But the story of Amber Glenn, because Liu was in third after yesterday, the Amber Glenn story to me, I mean, it doesn't trump a gold medal, but I mean, the redemption story there has got to be as compelling as Alyssa Liu winning the gold medal. But this is why we watch these sports and we get into them. And, we gatekeep as sports fans, don't we? And being a hockey guy, and if you're a hockey person, you know this. Hockey fans gatekeep. I actually should say, as a soccer guy, we gatekeep more than any other sports fan base in America. And we try to keep people out because they don't have a certain level of knowledge to be able to speak to us on the same level. And it's one of our flaws as sports fans. But in the Olympics, I think those barriers kind of go down. Because all I see on my timeline on social media is just American flag emojis and curse words, but like happy curse words, and just everyone gathering around and celebrating these Olympians, specifically the last couple of days, the Americans, and what they have been able to do. I didn't think it would get better. I thought that the U.S. could win gold today in hockey. I expected them to. But the way they went about it, and then the story of Amber Glenn, I didn't think it could get better than Michaela Schifrin yesterday. I don't know what I would put one above the others, but to me, they're all on the same level. The resiliency, the way that those athletes battled, the U.S. women's hockey team, Michaela Schifrin and Amber Glenn, even though Amber Glenn is not standing on the podium right now. It's why we love this stuff. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. If you saw that hockey game, man, it was so good. And you know what it makes me crave? More hockey. US and Slovakia have to wait a little bit for that. And then eventually, hopefully on Sunday, Canada and the US on the men's side for a gold medal in Italy. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Thursday edition of Drive Time Sports. You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. I said, having watched the U.S. women's hockey team win a gold medal in thrilling fashion 2-1 over Canada in overtime, that it made me crave more hockey. And maybe it did for you. And I have a way to whet your appetite because Saturday night, Air Force is taking on Army. That is not your run of the mill college hockey series, isn't it? They will drop the puck at 5 o'clock. If you would like to go on Saturday, I have a pair of tickets for the 13th texter to text Falcons and their name to 719 247 1313. We shift to basketball here as the Denver Nuggets will open up the second part of the season. It's not the second half. There's about 30 games left here. And it's all still out there for the Denver Nuggets. Granted, they do one thing better. Actually, two things better in this second part of the season than they did the first half. One is they got to stay healthier than they did in the first half of the season. But their health will have a direct impact on the other aspect of their game that they must get right between now and the playoffs. And that is the defensive side of the basketball. And why the health goes into it, because I think Aaron Gordon means everything to the Denver Nuggets in this regard. If you look throughout NBA history, and I'm talking the entirety of the league's history, it is incredibly rare for a team to win a title when they are not upper echelon on both ends of the floor. Roughly 80% of NBA champions all time have ranked in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Roughly 80%. And there have only been 3 teams in the history of the NBA that don't even rank in the top 15 on one side of the court or the other. And those outliers are the 04 Pistons. You know what they were built on and what maybe they lacked. The 2022 Golden State Warriors. And the second year of the three-peat for Kobe and Shaq. Those are the only 3 times in the history of the NBA that an NBA champion has lacked on one side of the court. With the Pistons, it was their offense. With the Warriors, surprisingly, you think Steph Curry, oh, they're a great offensive team. They weren't. And then the deficiency of those Kobe Shaq Lakers in 2001 was the defensive side of the ball. But what they had in common is that they were supremely talented on the other end of the floor. Or at least among the elitist of the elite that year. We look at Kobe Shaq's teams and we look at that Pistons team as an all, maybe Kobe and Shaq is more all-time great team. Pistons were an all-time great story and one-year champions. I look back at that Pistons team fondly. I love that Pistons team, and I'm not a defensive guy. I like offense, as you well know, listening to this program. I love that Pistons team. And maybe the Nuggets can bank on that because they are the number one offensive team in the league, despite all these injuries. Just to be safe, I think they should improve on the defensive end. Because right now, they are far, forget the top 10, they're far out of the top 15 right now. The Denver Nuggets are well into the 20s on the defensive end of the floor. And look, it's forgivable or maybe understandable when you don't have Aaron Gordon. And Ray Dominguez and I, producer extraordinaire, were talking during the break or talking before we went on air, actually. And Ray mentioned, well, the Nuggets were great defensively at the beginning of the season. Yes, they were, because they had Aaron Gordon. So that's why I say the health of this team, specifically for one player, I mean, getting Peyton Watson back is great too. And he'll help the defensive end of the floor with his shot blocking ability. But this is about Aaron Gordon. This is about the Nuggets' chances of winning a title hinging at this point on the health of Aaron Gordon. A more important hamstring in all of sport right now, I cannot think of. Aaron Gordon must be healthy, must be right. And you know what I'm saying is a absolute truth, because you saw unhealthy Aaron Gordon in Game 7 against Oklahoma City. So you know what I am saying to you is true. And the Denver Nuggets know that this is true, that they must be better defensively. The team that won it all, they weren't the best offensive team in the league that year. But they ranked 15th defensively. That's about that's about the line here. You can't be much worse than that and truly expect to win a title. So maybe with the best offense, maybe they have a little bit of wiggle room, but still they would be with that Pistons team, the Warriors, and the Lakers they stick out as complete outliers to what has been a common thread through the early NBA years, through the dynasty era, and now into this era where we're just changing out champions every single year. Even within this recent run of champions, 7 different champions in 7 years, the Nuggets are a bit of an outlier. So it just they have no choice. They have to be better defensively, or they will not win a title. And they can start making some inroads on that tonight. They're not going to have Aaron Gordon back against the Clippers. He's not going to be back for a little while. Same with Peyton Watson. But going into the All-Star break, one of the most heartening things, if you were a Nuggets fan, is the way that Christian Braun played. Christian Braun's a big part of this too. Because the Nuggets, when Ray says that they were a great defensive team at the beginning of the year, and we have this debate with Nikola Jokic, right? And whether he is a good defender. Nikola Jokic, and he's not alone in this when it comes to the Denver Nuggets, they're all good team defenders, right? And there's a difference, right? In football, Patrick Surtain is just a flat-out great defensive player. But maybe an Alex Singleton or Riley Moss are good team defensive players when the rest of the team is good around them, then they can shine. That's what Nikola Jokic is defensively. One-on-one, Nikola Jokic is not a good defender. Okay, it just has to be said. He's not. But in the team dynamic, with Aaron Gordon doing his thing and Christian Braun doing his thing, Nikola Jokic can exist within that and be quite good. That's where he gets the deflections. But he's not a great rim protector, and he doesn't do a great job of defending his counterpart on the other end of the floor. But and he's not, help. He's good at chipping in defensively. So the Nuggets, I would say Aaron Gordon is truly right now their only plus defender. Everyone else is good if Aaron Gordon is in there. I mean, the perfect comparison is the Broncos secondary, don't you think? If they have Patrick Surtain in that secondary for the Denver Broncos, everybody else's job is easier. Everybody else gets to look good, except at times Riley Moss. But the truth is always going to be somewhere in the middle with who Riley Moss is as a football player. But Pat Surtain in that secondary, that's one of the better secondaries in the league. Patrick Surtain not in that secondary, then the Broncos better be getting pressure up front. Same thing with the Denver Nuggets. Except the Denver Nuggets defensively don't have the comparison of the Broncos pass rush. It's just them, and they don't have anybody on the perimeter that can stop the ball regularly. Maybe Christian Braun. That's part of the Christian Braun arc. Maybe Cam Johnson. Again, got to remember Cam Johnson's on this team. Maybe they're that as well. Haven't seen enough of Cam Johnson in the Nuggets uniform to be able to judge. And with Christian Braun, that was part of his storyline coming into the season. With the money he is being paid now, perhaps at the expense of losing Peyton Watson when this season is over, Christian Braun's got to take his game to another level. And to me, that level has to come on the defensive end. So that's where I say the Nuggets can make some inroads to be a better defensive team in these final 30 games with a healthy Christian Braun, with a healthy Cam Johnson. But the guy that's going to tie it all together is Aaron Gordon. And that takes the Denver Nuggets from still no doubt a championship contender to, they're the champion. I think it might come down to being as simple as that. Aaron Gordon is healthy, the Nuggets win a title. He's not, the Nuggets don't. Nuggets back at it after the All-Star break tonight against the LA Clippers. You can hear that game at 8:30 on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. More after this on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Get ready, Colorado Springs. The loudest, fastest, craziest show on ice is coming. Extreme International Ice Racing hits the Broadmoor World Arena this Saturday, February 21st. Nitro-powered bikes, 14,000 RPM, and no brakes. It's pure chaos on frozen ground. Get your tickets now at axs.com, or you can win them from me right now. Let's do a pair of tickets for Saturday. Extreme International Ice Racing. If I sold it for you, if you're interested, be the 13th texter to text Extreme and your name to 719-247-1313. Speaking of winning, congrats to Michael, who picked up a pair of tickets to see Air Force and Army play hockey on Saturday night at Cadet Ice Arena. I have more chances for you to win tickets to that as we move through the program. Speaking of Air Force, last night, perhaps my final trip to Boise, Idaho, which it's fine. Like both ways. Boise, fine city, and it's also fine that I won't be traveling there for the foreseeable future as the Broncos are going to the Pac-12. Now, losing Boise State in the Mountain West, not fine. But I think they have a chance to get back what they lost in Boise State now with North Dakota State making the jump to FBS. So not the ideal scenario for the Mountain West on both the basketball and the football side. None of this is ideal. None of this is inherently good for the conference. It would be better if whatever the sticking point was, if the Mountain West and the Pac-12, which was Washington State and Oregon State, would have just came together and said, we could be better together than apart. And then they could have gone out and cherry-picked and said, we want Gonzaga for basketball. We want North Dakota State for football. We don't need to mess with Northern Illinois. Don't forget, they're now in the conference. We don't have to add UTEP to the mix. Maybe they don't even need to add UC Davis or Hawaii for that matter. Like, they could have been incredibly selective. But now neither conference can be because they're essentially a half of a conference in terms of what they could be. They have enough teams to constitute a conference, but I'm saying look at the Pac-12, look at the Mountain West as these two conferences are going to look like moving forward. Tell me you don't just want to take one conference in each hand and smash them together. You do. Because that would be a dope conference. Boise State, North Dakota State, even now with CSU and Jim Mora, who I think is going to do really well in Fort Collins, San Diego State. And then on the basketball side, you have Boise State, you have Utah State, San Diego State. And then you add Gonzaga. I understand why all of this is happening because it's college sports, but it's not good. But last night, Air Force nearly sent Boise State out of the Mountain West with an L as they went into a building that they had only won once in 12 tries all time in that building. And it reminded me of that one game that they won in Boise. I was on the call for that. Air Force built up an 18-point lead. They jumped all over the Broncos. Had an 18-point lead in the second half and squandered the entire thing. It was gone. And then down the stretch, the last couple minutes of the game, Milani Perry, who is going to finish her career as the all-time leading scorer in Air Force women's basketball history, she scores the last 6 points, including the game winner, with 3 seconds left to give Air Force their only win in Boise ever. Last night's game looked like that. Air Force did exactly what they needed to do. They came out, they jumped on Boise State. They were the better team early. They carried a halftime lead, which for this year means that they win far more often than they lose. And then in that third quarter, they led by as much as 12, and yada, 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 it's gone. But unfortunately, there were no heroics in store for the Falcons, courtesy of Milani Perry or anyone last night, as Boise State ended up winning the game 70-62. So potentially the last matchup, we'll see what happens in the conference tournament in Vegas, but potentially the last matchup between Air Force and Boise State goes the Broncos' way. And Air Force just couldn't make shots. You know, Boise State is a shot-making team, especially Natalie Pasco, the best three-point shooter. I think she's the best three-point shooter in America. I don't know that you go onto the NCAA's website and you can't find the nation's leader in three-point percentage on the women's side. You can't. Really bizarre. But she shoots like 42-43% from the three-point line. And she killed Air Force at Clune Arena in the first meeting, and she was big again. And Air Force just this year has not been able to match teams shot for shot. And then they weren't able to create turnovers the way they had done through the first 2.5 quarters. And look, Boise State now is tied for second in the Mount West. It's a bad loss because you had it. You were winning that game. You were up by 12 in the third quarter. But if you didn't watch the game and you saw that Air Force, who is in the 9th spot or the 8th spot, now the 9th spot technically, in the Mount West, loses to the team that's now tied for second, you wouldn't bat an eye. So that's a good basketball team, Boise State, no doubt about it, but Air Force should have won that game. And the reality now is starting to set in with, 4 games left, that Air Force more than likely will end up in the 8-9 game. Right now, that matchup would be Wyoming. I don't love that, but also check with me in this time next week, or even on Wednesday, you could check with me because the game's early that day. It's at 11 o'clock. So by the time I hit the air with this show that afternoon, I may have changed my mind, but Wyoming has been just one of those matchups for Air Force that they just can't seem to figure it out. But if they beat Wyoming on Wednesday, then you go, okay, turn over a new leaf. I think the ideal scenario right now, if you're an Air Force fan, is that Wyoming, although they've been able to beat Air Force, haven't beaten a ton of other teams in the Mount West this year. If they continue to fall and they have a really difficult schedule the rest of the way, and Nevada creeps up, I think that would be a more ideal matchup. I can at least say that, not putting it out of the realm of possibility that Air Force can beat Wyoming in Vegas. But I think they match up better with Nevada. And I will say this, their second round opponent, though it would be the number 1 seed, San Diego State, I think Air Force matches up better with San Diego State than they do UNLV, who would be on the other side of the bracket. So now Air Force wouldn't be favored if they're the 9 seed. They're not going to be favored in either one of those games. But if you're looking at the path here to where maybe Air Force makes a little bit of noise out in Vegas, they are right now on the right side of the bracket to do that. Because at that time of year, it truly is about matchups. I have seen too many games and just even in the short amount of time that I have been calling Air Force women's basketball, going out to Vegas and calling the tournament, I see it all the time. I see teams that have a very small number next to their name because they're one of the best teams, struggle mightily with the team down the pecking order because of the way they match up in a one-game win-or-go-home scenario. The matchups matter. And I think that Air Force has the potential, if they do get locked into that 8-9 game, that maybe they would have a couple of matchups on Saturday and Sunday out in Vegas that you go, okay, maybe they can make something happen. Now, the caveat, they've got to finish this season strong. I mentioned this last night on the broadcast. The toughest stretch of their schedule is right now. Boise State on the road, New Mexico on the road. You play a Wyoming team that's been your greatest enemy over the last few years. Then you go to Fort Collins. Then you play the conference leaders to close out the regular season. This is the toughest stretch. And I think you can't, even though there were a lot of positives last night, you can't just keep saying that, I think, with this Air Force team. If you want to buy into them, maybe making some noise out in Vegas, which I think they have the potential to do. I got to be sitting here in 2 weeks at the end of the regular season and say more than 2 quarters were good, 2.5 quarters were good, 3 quarters were good. Air Force is going to have to get some results. They're going to have to get some wins. But I think if they do that, plus the side of the bracket they're on, I think they have the chance to make the higher seeds on their side of the bracket a little uncomfortable. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Adam Silver says there will be measures against tanking next year. What are some of the possibilities? That's next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show on our social media platforms, whether you follow 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300, whether it be on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, or on YouTube. You can watch this show on a daily basis. And while you're there, you could comment, leave a comment, and I can display them on the broadcast itself. And it's just a handy way to interact with the show. It's kind of a one-stop shop. You're watching the show and you could type in your comment and just do everything in one foul swoop. Easy enough. You can also text into the show at 719 247 1313. I think the NBA is at least hopeful that tonight will change the conversation. Because we talked about the All-Star game for like one day, and then we were right back to tanking. Now, it's not to say that the All-Star game wasn't good. It was really good. I think it has a chance to be really good moving forward. But the tanking conversation is just so big right now that that's where everybody's focus went back to. And this won't help, this report from Shams, but again, this is being released before games actually start tonight. The Adam Silver has reportedly told NBA general managers to expect rule changes in order to curb tanking. And ESPN has a few of the reported changes. Now, let me say this off the top. Not a single one of these that I am about to read you, nor my idea that I think is better than all of these, which is just abolishing the lottery and giving the worst team the number one pick. Because a bigger problem than tanking is the teams that repeatedly tank. But even my idea certainly doesn't curtail tanking. And I'm not saying it would. I never said it would. Because I am a realist. And as a realist, I understand that in a sport like basketball, the circumstances are so unique, you are never going to stop tanking. You're never going to. In no other sport can one player make as profound a difference on your organization as basketball. Not even getting a franchise quarterback in the draft. Not even that is as powerful as landing a Victor Wembanyama or a Cooper Flagg or one of these guys. You're never going to stop tanking. And the sooner that the NBA world comes to grips with that, the better off we will be. Now, that's not to say that Adam Silver shouldn't put some things in place to try and talk some teams out of it, right? Or perhaps draft a code of conduct, because this is the thing that is still continuing that drives me up the wall. I know Utah Jazz fans feel like they are being unfairly persecuted, and it's bordering on a complex for them. The fact of the matter is you took every instance of tanking that we have ever seen, and you took it to a whole nother level. You played your best players for 3 quarters, got the lead, and then you sat them. I'm sorry. You are not the same as every other team. So for you to cry foul and say you're being picked on, you should be picked on. If Adam Silver wants to create some essentially unwritten or written rules about tanking, I'll say that Utah broke the unwritten rules, right? We have the unwritten rules in baseball. The unwritten rules in tanking say either you just don't play a guy or you play him in the most important moments of the game. I mean, people have been saying that tanking is making a mockery out of the NBA. No, the Jazz's form of tanking is making a mockery out of the NBA. So I have no problem with Adam Silver bringing the hammer down on Utah. And if these rules or some of these rules that Adam Silver enacts, if they kind of put in some guardrails and try to, you know, create a code of conduct, if you will, for tanking, as long as he understands that you're not going to deter tanking. And you shouldn't try to come up with a magic bullet to be able to eliminate tanking because that doesn't exist. But I have no problem with Adam Silver putting in some rules like he already has. Right. And tanking and load management can kind of go hand in hand sometimes. Right. But the load management, tanking, the stuff that makes you feel like you're not watching the best product you can be, I'm okay with Adam Silver coming up with ideas to try and deter teams from doing it. But you're never going to stop it. And the NBA will present some of these when the rules actually get put in as this will stop tanking. And that'll just be objectively false. But here are the ones that are being bandied about. First round picks can be protected only for top 4 or top 14 plus selections. I'll do you one better. Stop with the pick protections. If you want to trade your first round pick and you're worried that your team's going to be so bad that might end up being a really good pick, here's a novel concept. Don't trade your first round pick. Stop giving these teams a safety net to still tank and retain their pick. It is stupid. And it's the only sport that has these protections. And they should abolish them anyway. Just because it's dumb. Stop putting protections on picks. Your first round pick is your first round pick. Be able to see a little bit into the future to decide, are we going to really suck this next year? Yes. Okay. Well, we'd like to hang on to it. So just forget the impact on tanking. Like, they should just get rid of protecting first round picks anyway. Next, lottery odds freeze at the trade deadline or a later date. That's a terrible idea because part of the reason why tanking has become such a big issue right now is that it is happening sooner. Normally, this is the time out of the All-Star break where teams decide, you know what, it's time to tank. They were tanking before Christmas. So if you lock the draft lottery odds, you're just going to ensure that teams are going to tank earlier and earlier in the season. So that's nothing. That should be out the window. Teams can't pick in the top 4 of the year after making the conference finals. I think there's one team in recent memory that would qualify under that, and that was the Golden State Warriors. Like, talk about a fixing a problem you don't have. I guess this is Indiana. This is Indiana, right? We don't have Tyrese Halliburton, so we're just gonna tank. But to me, I think a lot of people are okay with the fact that the Pacers are tanking, considering that they don't have Tyrese Halliburton. So, to me, that feels like being a prisoner of the moment and not really looking at the big picture, because this doesn't happen a lot. So you wanna be doing a lot of good there. Lottery odds allocated based on 2-year records. Okay, so now teams gotta be in for the tank for multiple years. That does the opposite of what I am suggesting. I think abolishing the lottery actually does a better job of preventing a team that tanks 1 year from tanking the next year. Because they got their guy. Lottery extended to include all play-in teams. Just abolish the lottery. And the worry about the play-in teams tanking, it's like, I don't even like the play-in. So, as far as I'm concerned, you can abolish the play-in right along with abolishing the lottery. I really don't care about teams that are tanking. I know Adam Silver doesn't want play-in teams to tank. I don't care. Go for it. And then flatten the odds for all lottery teams. Oh, great. So now more teams will try to tank because they'll be like, I mean, if Adam Silver is worried about playing teams tanking, this isn't going to help. The only one that I really like, other than the getting rid of pick protections because it's stupid, but that's not even a tanking thing. No longer allowing a team to pick in the top 4 in consecutive years and or after consecutive bottom 3 finishes. This is the other side of what I have suggested. I say abolish the lottery because it's rigged anyway, but then tell teams that if you stink for long enough, and MLB does this with did this with the Rockies, you stink for too long, you can't come back in here. Rockies didn't have a top 10 pick because of those rules. I'm fine with the NBA putting those in. And that, to me, since I agree with it, and since this is reportedly what's coming from the league, my guess is that's going to quickly emerge as one of the favorites. Not because of me, but I'm just saying that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to punish teams in that way that repeatedly come back to the table tanking. So I would say that one is probably going to end up making the next cut, whenever that might be. But you just get. I don't understand why more people aren't talking. What is this love for the lottery that people have that they want to keep it? And they're not the only ones. The NFL is actually the outlier. Hockey does a lottery. Baseball does a lottery. It's a television product. As if we don't have enough of those already. But it's just, I don't need it. It's dumb. Not enough people are on my side on this. Abolish the lottery. Reverse order of finish, and let's move on with our lives. And if you want to put in the punishment a year down the road, 2 years down the road, go right ahead. But you're never going to stop tanking. You never will. And if especially with what the Utah Jazz have done, if that doesn't show you that where there's a will, there's a way when it comes to tanking, I don't know what will. Because there will be a team that will come along and do something to even top what Utah has done. I get it. Adam Silver keeps having to fight that fight. But let's just all acknowledge that tanking is never going to be abolished. And also understand how viable it is. And if you are a Jazz fan or a Pacers fan or an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, and the Thunder are the best example that's out there right now. The process didn't work in Philadelphia. That was a failure. I mean, it looks like it's going okay for San Antonio when they tank to get Victor Wembanyama, but they still don't have a title to show for it. OKC is the poster child. Tanking works. Tanking's a viable way to build yourself up to win a title. The NFL is not the only copycat league. It's not the boogeyman. And I would actually say load management to stars is a bigger problem for the NBA than tanking is. Again, they're adjacent to one another. They share some similarities, but I think it's a bigger blight on the NBA that fans can pay ungodly amounts of money. And I just went to a game in Phoenix, and I will say that in Phoenix, it's pretty reasonably priced. But it just made me realize how insanely priced the Denver Nuggets are. Which then made me realize how insanely priced the Avalanche are. If not to go on a tangent here, but and the fact that people are buying those tickets to see the stars and are not, that's a bigger problem for the NBA than tanking. But tanking is the topic du jour, so sure. One problem at a time, trying to nix that. But here's the other thing too. I say that tanking's not the biggest issue for the NBA, but also it's not great. Like, if you're a fan of a team that has no hope of winning a title, tanking is fine, but you still don't love it. Right? Even if you embrace the tank, don't you feel a little dirty? Just a little bit. Like, it'll wash off. You'll feel better later on, but don't you feel a little icky rooting for your team to lose, hoping that your team loses? And the reason I bring that up is because Mark Cuban, who I see eye to eye on so many things, even see eye to eye with him on tanking. He tweeted out the other day, the league should embrace tanking, which embrace is not the word I would use, but he brought up a lot of really good points. But he's still tweeting about this. And he said something. I gotta pull up this tweet from Mark Cuban. And it's like, you're going too far. You made some good points, and then you went too far. What did he say? Oh, now he's tweeting about politics. And find it. There's so many tweets from Mark Cuban. But essentially, what he said, and I'm sure Ray can find it because he's better at this than I am. But essentially, what Mark Cuban is saying in one of his latest tweets is that the bigger issue for the NBA, and I think him and I are on the same wavelength, he's talking about the experience. The experience of going to the games. And I'm like, I'm with you, man, because I'm talking about load management and how that is a bigger problem than tanking is in the NBA. And then he says that people don't remember the score of the game that they went to and who wins or the shots. They remember the experience they had with the people that went to the game with them. Let me stop you right there, Cubes. I don't remember the score of I don't even remember what the game 6 with the Denver Nuggets. I was in the building when the Nuggets won a title. I don't remember what the score was. But I remember moments from that game, and I remember who won. Like, this is Mark Cuban out of the Adam Silver. You just need to watch the highlights. Like, actually, no, Mark, somebody who won't remember who wins the game, we actually don't want them to go to the games. Because some of the people, somebody needs to do like a graph and find the proportions here. Because I feel like a lot of people, and maybe this has been your experience too, a lot of people that go to NBA games, the type of people that go to NBA games and don't care who wins and loses, they're just there to be at the game. Those people seem to have a lot of money for some reason. And they're driving up the price for everybody else. They're the people that make us refer to NBA games as fashion shows. They're the people that ESPN pans over on national television. Ooh, look who's here. This person and this person. The people who want to be seen at the games. They're the people that don't care about who wins and loses. I'm sorry. When I go to a game, I care who wins and loses. I could tell you whether the Nuggets or the Avalanche or the Chiefs or the Rockies, I could tell you when you show me like a ticket or you bring up a game that I went to, and I went to a lot of games, used to have season tickets to the Rockies growing up, I would be able to tell you almost every who won that day. The people who don't care are actually part of the problem, Mark. Those are the people who just want to be seen at the game. So it's like even allies in this tanking debate, you're like, oh, no, I don't agree with you. You know what this is? This is like a presidential debate right now. Like I think we're all kind of on the same side for the most part. People that want to see the NBA be better, right? We're all on that side of the aisle. But as we're all debating, we'll be like, I agree with that guy. And then the next time I'll be like, I don't agree with that guy. It's like a presidential primary debate. Like they're all ideology, all on the same spectrum in terms of their beliefs, but even they break from one another on certain things. That's kind of what this tanking debate has become. The other day, I'm putting my arm around Mark Cuban and saying, it's me and the Cubes. And now today, I'm like, no. I actually want people to go to the game that care about who wins and loses, Mark. I know as an owner, you want the people who don't care because they're celebrities and rich businessmen and Instagram models who have the disposable income to buy your most expensive seats. I don't care about those people. Anyway, went long there. 719-24/7, 1313. Your thoughts on these tanking rules when we come back on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Air Force taking on Army this Saturday at Cadet Ice Arena. The series is sold out, but I still have your hookup. I can't do much good for many people in a number of different ways, but once in a while, I'll have tickets to a sold out hockey game and be able to give them away. And thus, I will display my worth to you. So if you would be interested in a pair of tickets to see Air Force take on Army Saturday night, 5:05 is the start time. It's when they will drop the puck. Be the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719 247 1313. NBA coming up with some ideas to curtail tanking like the Utah Jazz did. Interesting text. Let's get into this conversation here. From the 571, people have different opinions on essentially what the Jazz did. Playing someone for 3 of 4 quarters meant giving the fans the good stars for 3 of 4, and not playing them in the fourth quarter is relatively brilliant as long as you actually lose the game. And look, I said this about the Jazz, like if it wasn't such an abomination what they did, I would actually be impressed. Like I can respect to an extent the creativity that Utah showed. But again, getting back to my disagreement with Mark Cuban, I do think that people care about the experience in going to the game. If you are, and I guess let me just ask this question. If you know that your team is tanking, how many games in that season are you going to? Like setting aside whether you want to, are you going to pay money for a team that's trying to lose? So I would actually argue that for the people in the arena, that it's not good. I actually don't think it is. And I don't think that's the reason why the Jazz did it. Maybe state-run media out in the SLC has been bringing some of this stuff up. I don't buy it. They did this to get around the rules that are already on the books as far as tanking. They weren't trying to throw their fans a bone and say, okay, you got 3 quarters of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen. And we got to get to the business of tanking now. It was not that. It was to get around, to avoid the very thing that they ended up getting, and they ended up getting an even bigger fine because of the way they did it. I do agree with you. It's relatively brilliant, but I don't think this is Utah trying to do right and trying to strike a balance. I think this is them trying to avoid getting fined, and in the end, they got an even bigger fine. And I think that's part of why Adam Silver levied the fine that he did, because he knew what they were doing. I mean, but if that's your opinion, if you would pay money to go to a game to watch your favorite team, like I guess in the scenario that you're throwing out there, I think it would need to be like, remember if this was a few years ago now, I think there was a big this was load management, not tanking. Remember when the Warriors, there was a story that was done by all of the local media because a family drove down from South Dakota to see Steph Curry play the Denver Nuggets. And he sat. And it was a big deal. And in fact, what happened in Denver regarding that actually was one of the kind of the sparks that really lit the fuse when it comes to load management. Is that family from South Dakota that drove down to Denver at great expense and took a ton of time just because they wanted to see Steph Curry, and then Steph Curry wasn't there. And it's part of the reason why the reporting rules for injuries are the way that they are. The only way that I would agree with you fully is if I wanted to watch Lauri Markkanen, but I wasn't a Jazz fan. Because if I'm paying my own money, first of all, if I pay my own money to go and watch a team that's actively tanking, then hit me over the head with a sock full of nickels because I've lost my mind. I don't know why anybody would show up other than the crowd Mark Cuban's talking about that doesn't remember the score or who won. I would not go to a game and pay my own money, especially now that I am also financially responsible for two other human beings. I would not pay my money to take them to a game to watch a team that is tanking. I'll watch a team that's tanking on television. I'm not going to the game. So the only way that your scenario works for a person who pays for a ticket is basically if the Warriors all those years ago, when they visited Denver, did this. And then the fans there at Ball Arena would have gotten to see Steph Curry, but they would have gotten to see a Denver Nuggets win. But you're really threading a needle there. I would not be okay paying money to go to a game, rooting for a team to win, only for them to have a chance to win and then to throw the game. I would feel like I wasted my money. Take your thoughts on it. 719 247 1313. Coming up next, Nikola Jokic. The question is being brought up again. How much does he care after the All-Star game? A recent interview with Malika Andrews sheds a light and also shows that two things can be true about what Nikola Jokic does care about basketball-wise and what he doesn't. And that's next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Speak of the devil, Nikola Jokic, there's been a ongoing debate on how much he cares, and you remember there was a horse that he was very overcome with emotions about winning, and some of the comments he's made, "Oh, I wanna go home. I was in the room when he said that, and everybody laughed," and this weekend being the All-Star game, Nikola Jokic stepped onto a very big stage. A stage that maybe some people really haven't seen him too much on. And I think that the most casual basketball fans will say that Nikola Jokic is arguably the best player in the league and he doesn't care about basketball. I think that if you ask the most basic, common NBA fan, or they like the NBA, those would be the two things they say about Nikola Jokic because he hasn't shed this label, I don't think. In fact, Malika Andrews of ESPN, clearly making my point, felt compelled to ask him about it. Here's what Nikola Jokic said about how much he cares about basketball. It is his personality. And I have said this as time went on, Nikola Jokic has leaned into this caricature of himself, of a guy who doesn't care, right? He comes over from a foreign country, okay, culture shock, all of that kind of stuff. He has a personality that, because and part of where he's from, but just who he is as a person, doesn't quite fit what we expect out of our athletes. But then as he and the Nuggets start to have success, he realizes that people are entertained by it. They're amused by it. They're not upset about it. They're amused. So what does Nikola Jokic do? He leans into it more and more, not to put on a show, not for you or I, but for himself. I think it's a protection mechanism. If he puts out this vibe, like what I would compare it to, remember the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza, um, he has this life hack for his job, and he says, "I just look annoyed all the time." Maybe you've used this in your own work life, but George Costanza said, "The more annoyed I look, the less work gets heaped onto me. If they think that I'm overwhelmed by the work, they won't give me more work." One of the many brilliant ideas from George Costanza, who arguably best television character of all time. But I digress. It's the same thing with Jokic. The more he acts like he doesn't care, the more, or I should say, the less that people will ask of him. Oh, why am I going to ask Nikola Jokic to do this or that? He didn't even like basketball. He's a very private guy. He's also a very family-oriented guy and wants to spend as much time with his family as he possibly can, and you know that his brothers go to every game. He wants to spend as much time with his family as possible. And if it gets him out of obligations outside of playing a game of basketball to try and win a championship, he doesn't want to do it. So he continues the bit. But when you're being pressed on ESPN during All-Star weekend, you got to kind of got to be upfront. You got to be honest. You can't go in there and say, yeah, I don't care, because then you would, and Nikola Jokic doesn't want to, I don't know that he cares a ton about the way people feel about him, but as a man, you want to be at least respected. You don't have to be liked or universally praised, but you want to be respected. And for him to go on and just play the bit up more and more with Malika Andrews and say, I don't care about basketball, that's not a good look. That's not casting him in a good light. That's causing problems for the Denver Nuggets. So there was Nikola Jokic being honest. His personality is a little bit different. But he cares about winning. And this is why the All-Star game thing fits in with him perfectly. Nikola Jokic played 5 minutes of the first game, if you want to call it that, in the All-Star game. Okay? The rest of the time, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but LA. And that's not a bit. That was real. Nikola Jokic on the bench was real. He didn't want to be there. You know why? Because him winning the All-Star game does not help the Nuggets win a title. That's what he is focused on. He wants to win another championship. He wants to do anything he can to deliver another championship to the city of Denver so he can be on parade again. The All-Star game does nothing. So this is like post-game press conferences and scheduled appearances for the team. He don't want to do it because his sole focus is winning a championship and going home to see his family. And then eventually, when the job is finished and the Nuggets win a title, he wants to go home to his horses. But here's the thing. You can't look like that if you're Nikola Jokic. Clearly, he understands the time when how, doing a bit can be beneficial. Here's a bit he needs to do in the All-Star game. Do the bit where you act like you're happy to be there. I can understand where Nikola Jokic is coming from. And I can say that Nikola Jokic has a one-track mind when it comes to basketball, and that's winning a title, and Nuggets fans should love that about him. But I can also acknowledge that what happened on Sunday was a bad look for him, because the entire conversation around the All-Star game is that guys don't care. And while on the court, the guys look like they cared, Jokic and his buddy Luka look like they wanted to be anywhere else. And that's not good. And I said leading up to the game that I hope Jamal Murray rubbed off on Nikola Jokic, because Jokic and Luka, to Kevin Durant's point last week, are the biggest offenders when it comes to making that entire weekend a goof and not caring. It's okay to appreciate that Nikola Jokic is family-oriented. It is okay to appreciate that Nikola Jokic doesn't care much for the individual accolades, which the All-Star game kind of is. But you have a level of status in the game right now that you need to take seriously. And if you can just give a little bit better body language while you're sitting on the bench in the All-Star game, it would help out a lot. Because there are people that are paying to see you at that game and they only saw you for 5 minutes, and then they'll go home and watch the highlights and see that it looked like Nikola Jokic took himself out of the game. Thanks for the timing. Back after this. Welcome in. Good Thursday to you. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, the streaming apps of those two radio stations, which are free to download and free to use, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, or whether you're watching the show on our social media platforms. If you're watching the show, you can leave a comment on your social media platform of choice, or you could text into the show at 719-247-1313. If you have thoughts on the day's topics, perhaps you have thoughts on these three, which are, and I think you're going to have to pull, I don't know that I put the imaging for this in the log there, Ray. Peek behind the curtain. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I think I got to give Ray a second to queue up the open for this. But the three stories that are driving the show today are, you got it, Ray? It's in line. Go to liners. It's in there. The fun of live radio, but also the fun of remote live radio, which I've been doing way too long. All right, we ready to go? All right, hit it. I've been up since 4:30 in the morning. Cut me a little slack. By the way, not to make this all about me, although I can make my travel grievances story 1, 2, and 3. What is the deal with the Boise airport? Why are there only direct flights at before the sun comes up? How is that allowed? In order to get back to Colorado, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and even then I was skirting the normal airport rules because I'm supposed to be there 2 hours in advance. And I wasn't. And I was starting to panic. Anyway, no flights when the sun is down. That's what I'm going to say. I don't want to fly at night, and I don't want to fly before breakfast time. That might not be feasible given the number of people that rely on air travel. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get to my opinions on things. Story number 1 is as dramatic a gold medal game that you will ever see. As dramatic as that other one that you may remember if you're a United States hockey fan, but this one ended better. Wasn't Sidney Crosby scoring the winner in OT to have Canada beat the US? It was the US in women's hockey defeating Canada in overtime by a final of 2-1 to capture their third Olympic gold medal. And it was couldn't be more different than the 5-0 boat race that we saw in the round robin. And credit to Canada. Like, they brought their A game and gave US everything they could handle. But I said this the other day about, the US and Canada on the men's side having kind of cakewalked through the games, and how now into the quarterfinals they got to lock in a little bit. And I thought both teams got that and are going to be better for it. Well, the thing is with the US, they've been coasting on the women's side till now. There was no game that they could afford to risk losing as they got locked into that, championship mentality or whatever you want to call it. They had that game. They had to lock in. And to their credit, they were able to before it wasn't too late. But the GOAT of women's hockey, Hillary Knight, maybe the one player on that team that you can name. And I don't begrudge you. Right? This comes around every 4 years, and we kind of relearn all of these characters in these stories. But Hillary Knight is one that has gone from one Olympic cycle to the next. She is a U.S. hockey legend. And the fact that she is the one that ties the game with 2:04 left in regulation to send it to overtime is actually perfect. And that's the moment, maybe that desperation got the U.S. to lock in because they score that goal and then they get the winner in overtime to beat Canada 2-1. And it caps off what has been a remarkable 36 hours for the U.S. And I would say overall, doesn't it feel like this hasn't been a banner couple of weeks for Team USA? Like up until like yesterday, didn't it feel like the story of Team USA at the games was that of disappointment and missed opportunities? Right? You have, what happened with, Lindsey Vonn and what happened with Ilya Malinin, the quad god, even as recently as yesterday. You have Amber Glenn, Colorado Springs-based figure skater, that botches one of her elements in her routine and puts her way out of medal contention. It just feels like, and then you had Michaela Schifrin, right, who ran her medalist drought to 8 races earlier in these games. And perhaps that makes what has transpired over the last 36 hours even sweeter. Because I think this Olympics was about the misses, was about what the U.S. did not do rather than what they did. And then Michaela Schifrin won gold. And didn't just win gold yesterday, she dominated. And then today, the U.S. women's hockey team, in a game we didn't expect to be that close, maybe we should have, I didn't, shows the resiliency that we love all the athletes of Team USA to have, to come back and to beat their fiercest rival in overtime to win a gold medal. And then you have Amber Glenn, who coming into the day had what the history of the Olympics would tell you would be no shot to even sniff a medal. And she comes out today in the free skate and is flawless and puts herself at the top of the standings, bouncing from 13th to 1st. Now, she did not ultimately hang on. And I guess the silver lining in that dark cloud is that it was an American, Alyssa Liu, who ended up winning gold. But just the story of perseverance that Amber Glenn is. And she was shaky in the team competition. So she had not had a very good Olympics. And today, to lay it all on the line, to show that resiliency, to bounce back into at least for an hour, hour and a half, however long it was, to be able to sit there in that chair that they give the leader, to feel the immense pride in what she was able to do. I know it's not a medal. I kind of put it in the same realm as Lindsey Vonn. Like, there is a reason to celebrate the effort. There are reasons to celebrate athletes during the Olympics, even the ones that don't win the medals. And Amber Glenn is an example of that. But her bounce back, Alyssa Liu winning gold in women's figure skating, the U.S. women's hockey team, Michaela Schifrin, how about these 36 hours for Team USA? Pretty spectacular. And now you look at the rest of the Olympics and you're like, wait, we got more hockey. We got more chances to win gold. Team USA might end with a flurry here. I don't think they're going to catch Norway, but maybe they can make it maybe catch Italy. Jump them for second. But remarkable women on display representing the United States over the last 2 days in Italy. Back stateside for story number 2, which is the second half of the NBA season tipping off tonight. The Nuggets are a part of it, and they are taking on the Los Angeles Clippers of Inglewood. And now we set up what is the focus for the Denver Nuggets for these last 30-ish games. In order for them to win a title, they must be better on the defensive end than they have been the first 52 games-ish. You look throughout NBA history, and it is not littered with teams that ranked in the 20s defensively that have won titles. In fact, 80% of NBA champions all time were top 10 in both offense and defense. There are only 3 examples of teams that did not, either on the offensive end or defensive end, rank in the top 15. 3 champions. The 04 Pistons with Chauncey and Tayshaun and Rasheed Wallace and Benny Wallace. The 2022 Golden State Warriors, perhaps Steph's finest title. And then the second year of the Shaq Kobe three-peat. Those are the outliers. But they're the exceptions that prove the rule. You can't be in the bottom half of the league on one end of the court or the other and expect to conquer this league. Now, the Nuggets, like maybe those 04 Pistons, the 22 Warriors, the 01 Lakers, maybe because they are so freaking good offensively, they are the number 1 offensive team in the league. Maybe they have a chance to overcome it. They can't overcome where they are right now. But could this team win a title if they're number 1 in offense and 17th in defense? 18th in defense? Yeah, they join a short list, but it's possible. The better way for the Denver Nuggets to win a title this year is if they improve quite a bit on the defensive end. And the key for them doing that is to get Aaron Gordon back. The title hopes of the Denver Nuggets now ride on the hamstring of Aaron Gordon. If he is healthy for the postseason, the Nuggets can win it all. If he's not, Game 7 of the OKC series all over again. They've proven that with Jokic in, out of the lineup, Murray being in the lineup most nights, being without Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon, they can get by offensively. They can be great offensively. But they need Aaron Gordon to be good defensively. And the fact that the Denver Nuggets have fallen off so much, even from the beginning of the season on the defensive end of the floor, it coincides with Aaron Gordon's rash of injuries. The Nuggets must creep up into I'll say at least this. If they want to be taken seriously as a title contender, once the playoffs roll around, where they rank in the NBA in defense, that number has to start with a 1. It could be 2 digits, but that first digit better be a 1. If it's a 2, I don't think that the Nuggets are going to win a title. And it could be tough because they may not have Aaron Gordon for much of the remaining time, but they have to figure out a way to get a little bit better defensively and then have some faith that Aaron Gordon will be able to come back and help them out even more. But that's the focus here. Nuggets on the defensive end of the floor. Can they be better than they were in the first half of the season, because their chances at a title are, as history would tell you, depending on it. And story number 3, also out of the NBA, Shams Charania of ESPN reporting that Adam Silver is going to enact new rules to help prevent tanking, or, to use ESPN's words, combating tanking, anti-tanking, which I think is the big takeaway. Adam Silver cannot fully admit this, although he talked about this at his All-Star Game State of the Union presser. The worst place for a professional sports team to be is in the middle. And he's right. So say the next thing, that tanking is inevitable, that tanking can work, that there's nothing that the NBA can do to stop tanking. Maybe Adam Silver can't bring himself to do that. Trust me, in his heart of hearts, he knows. And you and I know. We don't have to love tanking. We don't have to think it's the best thing ever. We don't have to be like those Sixers fans, trust the process. But you have to acknowledge that there are some benefits to tanking. But in the meantime, Adam Silver, I think he has to, in my opinion of Adam Silver, is as low as it's ever been. But here's the one bit of leeway I'll give him. It's a tough spot to be in, because he can't outright say, I'm cool with tanking. Tanking's awesome. He can't. And he also has to enact rules that show that he doesn't like it. Because you got to prevent teams from doing what Utah has done and made a mockery out of the league. You can't do that. So, will any of these at least curtail tanking? Will we see less tanking if any of these rules are enacted? First-round draft picks can be protected only for top 4 or top 14. I say just abolish protecting picks at all. You want to trade your first-round pick? Fine, trade your first-round pick. You want to trade picks in 2032? Go for it. But you're on the hook for whatever pick that is. You can't protect it anymore. Why are we giving general managers, a plan B here, a poison pill, Yeah, we traded you, but it's protected. So we'll take that back. Thank you very much as we finish tanking. Protection should be gone anyway, but I do actually think this is a way that will help. Lottery odds freeze at the trade deadline or a later date. So you're okay with tanking earlier in the season? That doesn't make any sense. No longer allowing a team to pick in the top 4 in consecutive years and or after consecutive bottom 3 finishes. This I like the most because this is essentially what I proposed the other day when I said abolish the lottery. You abolish the lottery, allow teams to tank, or at least teams tank. Reverse order finish is how we decide the draft order. And then you say, if you come back in 2 years in the same spot, we're not going to give you your pick. We're going to kick you out of the top 10. You're going to forfeit it, whatever you want to do. So I think that one is a really good one. And I think that is my favorite to actually get put into place. They may work on the timeline. Back-to-back years seems a little bit much. Teams can't pick in the top 4 the year after making the conference finals. That is strictly aimed at Indiana, and that is not something that routinely happens. So why are you putting in a rule? Lottery extended to include all play-in teams. I say abolish the lottery and flatten the odds for all the lottery teams. Again, abolish the lottery. So no pick protections and don't allow and try to curtail recidivism. Those are the 2 best ideas, and I hope those things make it through. But there's a lot of, like most rule changes in every sport, a lot of fluff, a lot of nonsense. But Adam Silver warning teams, have your fun now. I'm going to come up with some rules for you next year. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, another story regarding the Denver Nuggets as a fan favorite is here to stay till maybe the season is over. More on that after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Drive time sports. Tonight, the Denver Nuggets are taking on the LA Clippers, 8:30 on Extra Sports 1300. One player that will finally be playing again. No, not Aaron Gordon, not Payne Watson. You have to wait a little bit longer for them. Spencer Jones will be back in the lineup because now he is a full-blown member of the Denver Nuggets in the NBA. No more two-way contract for Spencer Jones. He signs a fully guaranteed contract with the Nuggets. This has been in the works for a long time. But it was the Nuggets dragged their feet a little bit. I think they were trying to see if there were any trades out there that they could make to maybe open up a roster spot, Zeke Naji. But once that didn't happen, then it was only a matter of time before Spencer Jones was taken off of that two-way contract. And a two-way contract, just to explain it basically means you're not, with all due respect to Spencer Jones, who played plenty for the Denver Nuggets, you're not an actual member of the team. Not really. Like, they can send you down to the G League and bring you up to the NBA as they see fit, up and down, up and down. Almost like they do with baseball players who are actual members. But, like, think about it, those guys that are on the 40-man roster in baseball that you see they've moved them down, they move them back up, they move them down, they move them back up, which I got to imagine just the uncertainty surrounding his career that Spencer Jones was dealing with. I got to imagine this is a major relief for him, and he deserves this. Like, this is like when a walk-on earns a scholarship, which used to mean something in college athletics. Now it's when a walk-on gets an NIL deal, but that's neither here nor there. But just a guy didn't come in heralded out of Stanford. No one even heard of the guy. Even around here, no one had heard of the guy. Comes in because the Nuggets are so banged up, and he plays incredibly well. And he helped the Denver Nuggets when Nikola Jokic was out with an injury. So this guy deserved to get a full-blown NBA contract put in front of him. Now, the question becomes, is Spencer Jones going to remain on the team and Peyton Watson not? Because they are both now going to be restricted free agents. I'm sure if you ask any Nuggets fan, they'll be quite direct with you when you say, hey, would you rather have Spencer Jones or Peyton Watson? It's not really the question, is it? It's not a question. You'd rather have Peyton Watson, but Peyton Watson costs a lot more money than Spencer Jones does. I could see Peyton Watson leaving and Spencer Jones staying and kind of filling the role that Peyton Watson has. But therein lies the issue here. Because this is the Calvin Booth. We can't replace him. I guess this is from Moneyball, but we can't replace him, but we can recreate him in the aggregate. Right? This is part of what got Calvin Booth fired, wasn't it? The idea that you could keep going down into the well and bringing up another young player to just replace somebody. Now, I understand the economics that are at work here. And I'm not asking the Denver Nuggets to be the highest paid team, the most expensive team. But they should be in the running for it. Right? And it just seems like they were penny pinching a little bit with Spencer Jones. We don't want to pay you now. We want to see if we can move you. I don't like that mentality. Now, if you start losing guys, you need the flexibility. But the Nuggets should try to keep all of their players if they can from this team, which is, I think, the most talented Nuggets team ever assembled. But for two reasons, they're not going to be able to stay together. One is Stan Kroenke's frugal nature. And two is they're probably going to lose. They probably literally cannot afford people. The NBA will say, you can't pay this guy more than this because of the economics of the NBA right now. So if, let's say, Jonas Valanciunas or Tim Hardaway or Peyton Watson go and cash in and you lose somebody, you got to make sure that you maintain the flexibility to try and replace them. So it's a very tricky situation that the Nuggets are going to have to navigate this offseason. But I have said this, if there's a way that you can sign Peyton Watson to a cheaper initial extension with it growing over the years, no one has grown an emotional attachment to Cam Johnson yet. Right? Could you keep Peyton Watson and lose Cam Johnson? I think it's getting to the point where some Nuggets fans would take that trade-off. But the reality is, in two ways, the way that the NBA is and the way that the Nuggets owner is, they're not going to just pay everybody. They're going to lose people. And then when you lose people, you got to worry about being able to replace them, and you can't turn around and pay top dollar for somebody else. That's what I'm getting at here. If you have the potential to lose, let's say, Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway off of this team, and we'll see where this team ends up. But if you lose those guys, you have to try and replace them. And in order to replace them, that means you probably can't pay Peyton Watson, which then creates another spot that you got to figure out. So it's almost as if, the problem is this is the Calvin Booth thinking, but the Calvin Booth thinking is kind of the reality of the NBA, isn't it? That you have to make some of these decisions. It's just the Nuggets got to make sure they make the right ones. Like, that's the key there. You let the wrong guy go, and it's not going to work. But you can't, if you're going to lose Valanciunas and Hardaway, you got to find replacements for them. And you can't just turn around and give that money to Peyton Watson, because now you're in a situation where you've just had 1 year of all this depth, and now you have no depth again. So it's really, you got to keep everybody together somehow, some way, despite your owner's wishes, perhaps, and despite the rules of the NBA's salary cap. Or it's like you got to say goodbye to more people just so you can replace the guys that you lost involuntarily. And we've just gone too far. Adam Silver went too far. And I think that's why this abolish the draft thing is starting to pick up steam. Because it's so punitive. The financial structure of the NBA, that any good team, any high profile team, and part of the reason why they're high profile is because they have a lot of really good basketball players that people have heard of and that want to watch. But because it's so punitive, they can't stay together. And now you have this rotating cast of champions, 7 different champions in 7 years. So what's your answer? Let's swing the pendulum back the other way and allow our brands, our big brands, and our best teams to be able to load up on rookies. So I think that this abolished the draft thing from the NBA's perspective. I hear people, Stan Van Gundy and others, that have mentioned how it's a way that they believe it could curtail tanking, which it's not. It's not that, but at least they're presenting it as that. From Adam Silver's perspective, I feel like the floating the idea of abolishing the draft is a way to restore an NBA that was closer to his predecessors. To give the opportunity for, I guess now, the Lakers, Celtics, OKC, although what rookie would voluntarily go to OKC? But it's a way to kind of create super teams in a different way, a different kind of super team, by allowing teams to just bid on the services of these rookies. But it's an overcorrection to what is happening. But what is happening right now in the NBA, the Nuggets have gotten caught up in it. And they're going to get caught up again because they already played Christian Brown and people want them to pay Peyton Watson. And then they did the right thing today by making Spencer Jones a full-fledged member of the team. Some of it's their own doing that they shouldn't have done, Christian Brown. Some of it is their own doing that they should have done, Spencer Jones. And it may cost them both. Both may end up costing them somebody that all of a sudden has ascended into being a really, really good basketball player, and that's Peyton Watson. It is all very – and this is part of the thing too, and I got to take a break. But just a sentiment I have had over the last few days. Man, right now in the NBA, we're getting ready to start the second half of the season. The negative outweighs the positive for this league. And that's not good. Right? Tanking, load management, the financial structure that's in place, all of these things, I think, hurt the NBA to some degree. And they altogether overshadow what has been kind of a compelling season with at least a half a dozen teams that I think are viable title contenders. I think it's upwards of 8 that you can make a case for. But it's this other stuff that dominates the conversation. It's our conversation too. Not better than anybody else, but it's not good when the ratio is the way it is with the NBA. And people are more pointing out what's wrong with it than what's right with it. 719-247-1313. One last break. Come back and wrap things up here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Heading down the home stretch of this Thursday edition of the show, um, with Spencer Jones becoming a full-fledged member of the Denver Nuggets roster, that opened up one of those two-way slots for the Nuggets, and the player they have chosen to essentially replace Spencer Jones in that regard is a buff, KJ Simpson, who was a part of that recent CU team that made a run in the NCAA tournament. He now is on a two-way deal with the Denver Nuggets, the team announced today. So a buff coming home. And we'll see if they can, lightning can strike twice here. And that's the thing about Spencer Jones. Like, I don't want to say that he's become a star, but he's a great story, unheralded coming out of Stanford. In fact, he was asked, he still has his LinkedIn profile and is on there constantly. And he was asked about it by his teammate Cam Johnson on his podcast. And Spencer Jones said, "Hey, I'd be stupid to not keep those connections that I got at Stanford," which no matter what walk of life he went into, that is smart. But also at the same time, I think there was part of Spencer Jones that was like, hey, this NBA thing, it may not be for very long. Well, maybe it will be. Maybe it will be. But I think because of the way he has played, but also, let's face it, circumstances with all the injuries, he's been kind of allowed to step into the spotlight, and credit to him, he's taken advantage. So we'll see if KJ Simpson ends up doing the same here. Now, that does still keep open a roster spot. So the buyout market here, and Ray, remind me, is it March 1st that they got to sign all these guys by? Okay. So we got a little bit, not as long as if this were the 19th of a different month, obviously shorter month. But the Nuggets can still be active. Ray and I have been very much on the record. That player to us is Lonzo Ball. We'll see where the Nuggets' priorities lie when it comes to this. And even Ray and I are keeping in mind, like, this is not the missing piece to a Nuggets title. Making Spencer Jones a full-blown member of the roster was not the missing piece for the Nuggets winning a title, okay? But we're talking about, reinforcements if another injury happens. This is about filling out the roster and basically making the best roster the Nuggets franchise has ever had that much better. But I don't want to spend, a ton of time on it, because I just don't think that it's going to be a player that ultimately makes the difference. I'll put it this way. If the injury to Aaron Gordon is so severe that the guy they sign on the two-way, or not on the two-way, but from the buyout market, has to take his spot, then the Nuggets are screwed anyway. So this is not a difference maker, but I am curious to see where they go, and there's some players that I think could be interesting to further fortify the depth of this Nuggets team, which has been a strength for them, especially in the wake of all the injuries that they have sustained. That's going to be it. Appreciate your patronage. My thanks to Ray back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios. Talk to you tomorrow from Albuquerque here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.